Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I'm working on the introduction to mentorship item in Pathways. So I've had a chance to think about the many mentors I've had in my life. Someone who imparted wisdom and shared knowledge with me, their less experienced colleague, as the dictionary defines mentorship. And I realized that mentorship in my life goes way back to when I had no experience of any kind. And Miss Dooley, my kindergarten teacher, taught me how to grow a radish and, importantly, the profound value of a nap. Another early mentor was my big sister Sue, who in the 60s was an SDS chapter founder, who bought me a copy of the Communist Manifesto when I was maybe 12 years old and taught me never trust the man. Then there was my high school journalism teacher, Dan Wilson, who taught me, and Cameron Crowe, actually, the author of Fast Times at Ridgemont High and director of Almost Famous and many other movies, how to write terse, inverted pyramid style newspaper articles. And in college, I had some great teachers, John Lynch and Norman O'Brown at UC Santa Cruz, classics professors who taught me that mentor was actually a person, or rather a character in the Odyssey. Odysseus puts mentor in charge of the education of his son Telemachus when he goes off to the Trojan War, hence the English word mentor. The goddess Athena, in fact, impersonates Mentor when then she then comes to Ithaca to urge Telemachus, it's time to man up, resist those suitors that are trying to steal the affections of your mother, go forth in a sailing ship to find your father and make a name for yourself in this world. And that's the kind of thing mentors do. But just as I prepared to talk about mentorship this week, my most important professional mentor, Paul Kagan, died at 82 years old at his house in Carmel. My plan had already been to talk about Paul, but as the provocative title of my speech suggests, I was planning on focusing on some of the difficulties I had with the man and how much you can learn even from a difficult person. Let's not call him reprehensible, just difficult, as well as you can learn from a kindly person. Paul ran a tight ship at Paul Kagan Associates, the Carmel-based publisher of dozens of monthly newsletters and reports on the finance side of the media industry. You could easily criticize him as a control freak and a micromanager, and I did, and many others did that worked for him. Just about every article had to go through him, and if he didn't like it, he would simply throw it in the trash and rewrite it. This is a guy who could not only type on a Selectric typewriter at 90 words a minute, but actually think brilliantly at that speed. But he had a horrible habit of finally getting around to reading your copy late at night and then calling you up with changes. So my favorite story is the one about a colleague who got such a call at about 11 p.m. That was a frequent occurrence, but in this case, it was 2 a.m. in New York, where Paul was moderating a conference in the morning. And he said, Bruce, he said, this copy, I'm reading it. What's the word? What's the word for this kind of copy? Hold on a minute. And he went and got a dictionary. I think he traveled with it. So here it is. Here's the word, soporific, tending to put one to sleep. And Bruce said, Paul, did you just put me on hold to go look up names to insult me with? And that actually got to him. That was one of the few times I ever heard of the man apologizing to anybody. But this was a guy who taught me how to write for busy executives and investors. The key thing being just bang it out, then come back and find the SMIT, he called it, the single most important thing, and move it to the top of the story in case that's all the busy executive had time to read was the first paragraph. Thus, he taught me a key thing in my line of work, which is to respect the reader's time and never use extra words, let alone extra whole sentences that were not essential, which is my natural verbose tendency. His company motto, in fact, probably could have been put in a phrase he said one time, we grind words to dust. And he taught me about how to sell your research too. He called it the plot value, a somewhat archaic concept in this digital age, But in those days, we mailed out newsletters stuffed into envelopes, and he wanted that baby to land in the client's inbox, if you remember those, with a profound plop. Paul said to me one time, you want the client to reach out immediately with his hands trembling when that happens, to tear open the envelope and find out what you've learned about the industry that he didn't know yesterday. That's what gets renewals. So basically, he completed the process that Sister Sue and Norman O'Brown and others had started, learning how to think, how to come up with ideas and lots of them, to never hold back on the reader, just get it all out there every month, confident that more good ideas will be coming along in time for the next month's edition. But it was a harrowing experience working for Paul. And eventually I decided, why am I working this hard for someone else? And went into business for myself. Our relationship, alas, did not survive the founding of Adams Media Research and my taking the business with me of some of his best clients, the Hollywood studios. As I understand it, he referred to me afterwards at staff meetings as that rogue Adams. But now I'm seeing tributes everywhere in the trade press and the local media, saluting him for not only being a visionary about the media industry, but a fine family man and a friend to many people. So I've gotten past the scars on my back as an ex-employee, and I can salute Paul now for what he was, a great writer, an analyst, and a great mentor. And now that he's gone, I'm glad to say that I did get the chance to thank him, actually. It was at the graduation of my daughter and his goddaughter from Santa Catalina, across the highway from NPS. And afterwards, there he was walking across the parking lot with his lovely wife, Flory, who was always a charming, wonderful woman who gave great gifts to the kids for Christmas. They were a good team. I had my mom in the car with me at that point, and I flagged him down and I introduced him. I said, Mom, here he is, Paul Kagan, the man who made it all possible for me. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Tom. Next, we will have our timer